Live from Boston Broadcasting in the WhattaDay studios, this is the WhattaDay podcast with your host, Joe Lowry.
This can't be happening! What the hell? ECW!
Hey everybody, Joe Lowry, WhattaDay, and that was a famous voice of ECW, Joey Styles, and I'm pleased to introduce my first guest here on the WhattaDay podcast. She is the Queen of Extreme, the lovely Francine. Francine, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Excellent. I'm glad you could be. I'm very grateful for this. This is great that we finally connected here. We talk on Twitter and all that good stuff, so I'm glad we could finally connect.
Yeah, and what a background you have going on there. It's lovely.
Yeah, I got some items back there. Yeah, I got to get your picture up back here. That's what I get. That's the next one. That's the next one on the bucket list.
That's right.
Yeah. So I gotta ask you. My first question really is, whose idea was it to put you through the table during that show with Pitbull and Shane Douglas and everybody?
That would be Paul Heyman.
Really? Okay. Yeah. And you went right along with it, did you?
Yeah, sure. I can't remember if it was like the night before. No, it was either the Friday before or the week before he called me.
Oh, okay.
And Paul was like, you know where this is going. And at the time, I wasn't sure who I was going to end up with, because I knew I wasn't going to stay with the Pitbulls for like ever,
Right.
And Brian Lee was pitching to have me as his manager.
Oh.
And so Brian kept telling me, you're going to leave the Pitbulls, you're going to be with me. And I was like, really? And so I'm thinking, okay, so I'm leaving this vinyl plethora, which I hated the gimmick. I hated wearing that kind of stuff. I'm leaving that, and now I have to go buy leather chaps, which is not that big of a difference in my eyes. But I loved Brian, so I was excited. So when Paul had called me, he said, you know where this is all going? And I'm like, I'm not too sure. And he said, you're going to end up with Shane. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, you're going to end up with Shane. And I said, okay. And he goes, why? Where did you think it was going? And I said, I thought it was going to be Brian Lee. And he said, absolutely not. And I said, okay. I had no clue. So he just told me, go and get some kind of underwear with the franchise written across it.
Right.
And I said, okay. And he said, and by the way, you're going to be put through a table. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, you're going to be the first girl to ever go through a table. It's going to be great. You're going to get pop, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, I'm ready, but I can't say I wasn't scared, because it was scary. But yeah, that night, I think, put my name on the map. So I was happy to do it.
I would say, because that, to me, ECW, now growing up in the Northeast and everything, WWE obviously was the only thing I could get on TV and cable and so forth. Then when the 80s and 90s hit and so forth, ECW in the Boston area where I'm at, they were on at like these obscure hours, 1, 2, sometimes 3 in the morning.
Right.
So a lot of my friends tape it, we watch it the next day and so forth. Then I went to a couple of live shows and all that stuff. But obviously ECW Attitude Era before there was an Attitude Era. To me, that's how I saw it. My first show, sitting ringside, Sabu lands on my lap, and I'm going, this is pretty cool. I like this stuff. So, that was my little foray into ECW. And of course, Tommy Rich was there, I think, at the time. He was managing the Full-Blooded Italians and everything. And it was a good time. And Taz was just coming around, and he was around that time frame, somewhere around there. But, you guys came along, the women, and you kind of stole the show with some of that stuff. That table bump obviously stole the show. There's no doubt about it.
Paul knew how to utilize us girls.
Right.
I always compare it to in the beginning, WWF, they were giving their girls, even the wrestlers, they were giving them 2 minutes. And they were, 2-minute matches, fluff, pillow matches, bikini showdown, all that BS, right? When I first started with ECW, I started in their training school. I never did indies. It was just right to ECW, right to their training school. And I was training to be a wrestler because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And when I met Paul, he just said to me, listen, I don't think women's wrestling sells. I know how to use females, and we're going to use you as a manager, and I'm going to get you over. And that, that's basically what he said to me. And I trusted him. And I said, okay, I'm green as grass. I don't know the difference between an apple and an orange at this point. It's like I had no prior experience. I went to some WWF shows at the Spectrum, but that's about my knowledge. I didn't get into the sport until I was like 19 years old. So right. I wasn't one of those kids that wanted to be a wrestler from, 5 years old. Right. I always wanted to be a mother and a nursery school teacher. Those were my two things. I got to do one of them. I wasn't a teacher. But Paul knew how to make the women shine. We never felt like we weren't a part of the show. Sure. So I am so grateful to him for that. Of course, you had to be able to run with the ball once he gave it to you. Sure. But I just was always thankful for the opportunity, and I was always willing to do whatever it took to get the segment over. So
just to go backwards a little, growing up, did you watch wrestling at all?
No.
You never watched it? So you
watched, I was never a fan. Like, I knew Hulk Hogan, I knew Macho Man. You know those, they're household names. I knew who they were. I never sat down and really watched the program. I remember I started watching WWF when I was like 18, 19 years old. Okay. And I watched a little bit of Global because we got Global where I lived as well. And I really enjoyed WWF. I would go, like I said, I think it was once a month or once every 6 weeks to the Spectrum to see the house shows. Never thinking, I'm going to be involved in this in any way. Just a casual fan. I watched Raw. I didn't have cable at the time. So to watch Monday Night Raw, I had to run to my girlfriend's house at 9 o'clock at night, and I would watch it from her house.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't have cable until later. But then, I kind of caught the bug a little bit because I won a contest through the Video Jukebox Network. And I don't know if you guys got that in Boston, but it was a network that you can pay like 99 cents and you can watch a video that you liked, right? Yep. So they had a WrestleMania contest. Okay. And being a mark, I actually sent in a postcard and they picked me as the grand prize winner.
Awesome.
So you got $500 in cash. You got a flight and hotel to New York, and they were at the Manhattan Center, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
Monday Night Raw. And so I went to that, and I remember like they had a car service pick me and my girlfriend up, and the line, because it was general admission, so people were waiting since like 6 a.m. to get in that building, Wow. And I get out of this car and they walk me right in, and the whole line boos me.
Wow. Unbelievable.
I felt like such a star, but I was, I was just a fan that won this contest. So I get to go, and I got to go to like a WrestleMania party, and I got to meet some of the guys. Still not thinking I'm ever going to be in the business. You know what I mean? And it's funny because we talk about this show that we went to, and Mikey Whipwreck, he was a couple rows behind me. That's a fan. Wow. Okay. We didn't know each other at the time, but we ended up working together. So I went there a couple times, saw them live, and then got into ECW one day. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I'm just eating dinner in front of the TV by myself. Here comes this show. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know any of the people because I was only used to WWF. I didn't recognize anybody. But it was it was like this grungy, dirty arena, and like it wasn't even full, and I didn't even know who these people were. But I started watching every week, and I kind of liked what they were doing because it was different than what I was watching on WWF television. And after maybe 2 months, the commercial came on, and they were like, "Do you want to be a wrestler or a manager or a referee? Call this number." And I was working life insurance. I hated it. Didn't want to work there anymore, and had no idea what I was going to do with my life.
Sure.
So I pick up the phone and I call the number,
Oh,
don't
wow.
know a soul in the business. Like only the people I met at that party, which you can't reach out to a WWF superstar for help. So I had no ties to the business, and I just called and I said, I think I can do this. And they said, go to our wrestling school. And I said, okay. And I met with Todd Gordon, and started with the school.
So you learned all the basics. You learned how to wrestle first before anything.
Yeah, they worked with me, basic wrestling skills. I was the only girl there at the time. There was like maybe 5 or 6 guys training with me. And Stevie Richards would come down all the time, so I worked with him in the ring a little bit. JT Smith was my trainer. He was part of the Full-Blooded Italians, the original ones. So I learned how to bump. There were a lot of things I didn't know, though. And I had my first match. And so I do my first match in front of Todd Gordon, and as soon as I'm done, I go to the bathroom and I throw up. I was so nervous, I threw up.
Supposed to throw up after the match.
Yes, not touring, not in the ring. I made it to the bathroom, got sick. But Todd saw something, told Paul about it, because at this time Paul was coming in, Eddie Gilbert's going out, right? We're switching from Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme Championship Wrestling. So they tell me to start coming to house shows. And I go to this one house show, and that's where I meet Paul. And they say, always have gear with you. So I brought like a gown, a dress, just in case. And they said, well, you're going to win a fake beauty pageant, and you're going to take a choke slam from 911. And I don't know what a choke slam is. We didn't practice that in school, right? So I'm like, I don't know what that is. And Paul goes, what, you don't want to do it? I said, no, I'll do it. I just don't know what it is. And he said, don't worry, he'll guide you.
There you go.
Okay. I'm the guest timekeeper, and I go and I sit down, and Al comes over and grabs me by the top of my hair and gives me the choke slam, and it's like white noise. You can't hear it's ooh, and then it's nothing.
Wow.
And I'm laying there, and I'm selling because I've learned a little bit, but it really hurt because it's the first major bump I ever took.
Yep, exactly.
And, they put me on a stretcher and they took me right home. Didn't even get to go to the locker room or anything. It was like real old school, And I get a phone call, come back, and I'm like, okay, and just kept going back, and it worked out. So
yeah. So that's how you got the itch then, right? You liked it, you wanted to be involved and all that, because I know that's like you just want to keep going. You're like, more. I'll take more. Yep, keep going.
You're in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
You feel that adrenaline for the first time, and you're just like, wow, this is pretty cool, I never knew to what extent it would lead to, but I said to myself, I'm going to try, because I'm falling in love with the business, but I don't have a backup plan. I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So let's try to make a go of this and see if it works out. And it did. So I was lucky.
That's awesome. So from a guest timekeeper to a beauty pageant winner to right in the ring. Well, that's a roadmap. That's a roadmap to success. That's for sure. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. It worked out, Paul. I mean, I came down the steps and I'm doing the little wave, and like I won, winning this pageant. But once I hit the mat, and I said to myself, I think this is going to be something that I'm going to stick with. I think I like this, Now, and the more I went, the more I fell in love with it.
Now, we know the crowd was into it, obviously, later on and all that good stuff. What was the attitude towards like the other wrestlers and like Heyman? Did they know they were onto something here by incorporating the women into these types of things, taking choke slams, power bombs, things like that? Because you really didn't see that in the 90s. Like you said, you saw the fights and the lingerie matches and all that stuff. But you didn't see the cat fights yet. And ECW was way ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, like I said, Paul knew how to utilize women, right? He knew exactly when the right timing was to get the girls involved. If the match is coming down, let's get the girls in and bring them back up. The difference that he taught me, when you have 2 female wrestlers in the ring, and not taking anything away from workers, because I love what they do and I think they're talented and beautiful and strong and all that stuff. But sometimes there's no story behind it. Some companies would just get 2 girls, throw them in there, have a match, and that's it. And you don't see them work together again after that. They go their separate ways or whatever. Having 2 females outside the ring you never know when they're going to get involved.
Right.
So the guys are sitting on the edge of their seat saying, when are we going to see something? Are they going to get in there? Is there going to be a cat fight? Is somebody going to get bumped?
Exactly.
It keeps the element of surprise there. And for whatever reason, people love the cat fight. So we incorporated a cat fight in every single match that we had.
It was brand new to the crowds. That's why. I mean, I remember watching it on TV, and Paul Heyman does have that. He's got the fan psyche in his hands, and he knows how to use it, like you said, utilizing the talent, utilizing the women, and so forth. Nowadays you see a girl or a woman come out to ringside, something's going to happen. But you go back to the 90s, it's like you didn't know. And that's what made ECW so special. I mean, I recall going to the house shows and everyone's like, yeah, Francine or, whoever else was in the Beulah McGillicuddy, all those girls. And I didn't hear anybody else's names. You know what I mean? It was all the girls' names. I'm like, wow, this is different. Now, I grew up in a different generation. I grew up in the Miss Elizabeth era or the, Fabulous Moolah was the only woman wrestler that I ever saw at WrestleMania 1. Mm-hmm. You go from that to this, and people are like, oh, my God, what's going on? And I loved it. I do know that some fans were turned off by it. I don't know if it was those crazy groups that, a woman shouldn't be in the ring, that type of thing. And I'm going, are you kidding me? They're transcending the sport to the next level, in which they did. And it was women like you that did that. And, people should be grateful for that. That's what I see.
I appreciate that. I always tell people, because I get a lot of men saying, the violence towards women, I don't condone it. It's not right. And my response is this: it's live theater, right?
Yep.
A form of live theater. I never did anything that I wasn't comfortable with doing.
Sure.
If I had a problem, I had that relationship with Paul where I can go to him and say, oh, listen, this is sketchy. I don't want to do something like that. But I always did. I think 99% of the time I did whatever I was told.
I mean, he wouldn't put you in that position anyway.
No. And if I, if I had a problem with it, it wouldn't have been done. Point blank. I'm not an advocate of beating women. I don't condone that.
I don't know who does, but
nobody's protesting movies that have domestic violence in them, or a TV show or something like that. This is a form of entertainment. It might not be the kind of entertainment that you like, but everything that we did was a puzzle piece to the bigger story.
Right.
And people need to understand that it's a soap opera, so to speak. Right. And if the girls involved are comfortable with taking these bumps or doing the things that we did, then I don't think anybody else should have a problem with it. In no way are we condoning men beating women.
Right.
It's not a message.
I agree.
Right. It's not a message we're putting out there. It's just it was an intricate part of the bigger story that we were trying to tell. Right. If I wasn't bumped, then Shane would have, there would be no sense for him to go after the guy who hit me or whatever the story was. Yeah. Everything has a storyline to it. So people need to just calm down and realize that it's not real,
It's a modern day soap opera. I get it. I mean, but you can't help it. Some people turn into TV on at 2:00 in the morning and they see somebody a woman getting powerbombed through a table. Like, oh my goodness, what's going on?
It's crazy.
Yeah. Did Paul Heyman in any way get negative feedback from people on that? I mean, was there any type of background noise in that situation? I mean, for that, or I mean, obviously it did wonders for the company and so forth, entertainment wise. But did he ever get any negative feedback from outside influences or anything like that?
I'm sure we did, but to those minute, you know what I mean? We were putting ourselves out there and trying to find our place in the business and trying to be different than WWE or WWF and WCW, something that made us stand out. And, to this day, people still say, oh, the violence against women. Well, if you look down the road, you'll see those other two companies kind of followed suit at some point. And, their girls were getting bashed too. So we did it first and we did it better.
There you go. I think so anyways.
Yeah.
So, you talk about wrestling and storylines and telling a story in the ring. And I've asked my previous guest, Don Morocco, Magnificent Morocco, and Tito Santana been on, and they were pretty vocal about the fact that a lot of the storytelling is not in the ring anymore. It's outside the ring. And maybe it's a generational thing. I'm not sure. But do you think that I mean, the talent nowadays is unreal. I mean, obviously the athleticism of any superstar that gets in the ring right now, whether they're training or developing, whatever, or main eventing, they perform to another level that I've never seen before, obviously, with what they do nowadays. But do you feel there's more storytelling outside the ring or inside the ring? Or I think it's changed, and a lot of my other guests think it's changed.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I have not sat down and watched a wrestling program in years. The only thing I did watch was because it was funny. I watched the AEW, the last pay-per-view.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Main event, which, because I love Gaga in a match. Like, it's just haha, funny Gaga stuff makes me just chuckle. And this was so great, the way they incorporated just the wrestling, but they threw in all the funny spots. And that's the only thing I actually sat down and watched. I haven't watched Raw. I haven't watched SmackDown. I haven't watched AEW. I don't know if I see a clip on like Twitter or something, that's how I keep up. But I haven't sat down and watched an actual program. So like I know some of the workers and I see what they do because if a clip comes up, I'll watch it. But if you ask me storylines right now, I don't know anything that's going on. Part of that makes me sad because there was one point in my life where I ate, slept, breathed wrestling. Like I loved it so much, and now I'm a casual fan. You know, if something intrigues me, I'll watch a clip here and there, but I can't sit down for 3 hours and watch a program. Like it's different than it was 20 years ago.
It is. It's much different. Now, it's an investment in your time now. I mean, if WWE wants you to watch all their programming, they're up to almost 7.5, 8 hours a week. AEW's got 3. Then you throw the YouTube stuff on there, the dark programs and all that. I mean, it's almost 24/7. So it is hard to keep up. I get that aspect. And probably thank God for DVR because that's how I keep up with it.
Right.
So you did say you watched AEW, the last pay-per-view. Did you really like it? I mean, they're the new people on the block. They're the new kids on the block. So.
I only watched the last match.
Right.
I didn't watch anything else. But
great match.
I enjoyed it because I always go back to when I worked with Chris Candido.
Yeah, great man.
He loved to put Gaga into all the matches. Like our straight guy was Shane. I'm triple threat. Straight guy is Shane. He always had that stern look. Muscle was Bam Bam, just standing in the back looking mean. And then the goofball, God rest his soul, was Chris Candido, and fabulous worker. Fabulous. Right. But he always wanted to put comedy in the matches. And I love that.
I love that too.
And there's a time and a place for it. I'm not saying every single match should have it. But when I watched the AEW match, it just brought me back to like when we would do house shows and Chris would throw in the funny spots for us and it would just lighten the mood and make us all relaxed and have a good time. And watching that match, just there were certain spots in there that I was on the floor rolling, laughing. It was just so entertaining. And sometimes you need stuff like that. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, that makes it bearable. It does make it bearable because a lot of my fans, a lot of the wrestling fans nowadays, every morning, Tuesday mornings, I get comments. This was painful to watch. I couldn't do it. I'm like, well, then don't watch it. I mean, I can't tell you what to watch and what you can't watch.
Right.
But AEW has really pumped, I don't know, adrenaline. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but they've really made wrestling fans excited again. And obviously, you can tell because of ratings and so forth. And they're blowing up social media every Wednesday night. I mean, they're number one trending more than NXT. So, that's kudos to Tony Khan, Chris Jericho, and all them, because they've done something. They've taken old school and mixed it in with new school, and that's something that you need to do nowadays.
Well, it's an alternative because, WWE has been the top dog for years and years and years and probably will be for a long time. But the different thing is you have all these talents that were held down in WWE and couldn't do what they had the ability to do. Now they go to this company and Tony Khan is like, hey, dude, you know what you can do. Let's do it. And with Cody knows, because Cody's one of the boys. Cody knows how he was held back. And it's so frustrating when you have an idea and it's a good one and no one wants to listen. And then you're suppressed and you can't do anything. When I worked there, I wanted to work. I pitched so many different things and there were ideas, and all they made me do were these stupid bikini contests. And I'm just like, I didn't work my ass off for 13 years to be in a bathing suit strutting around. That's, I'm not a diva, so to speak.
No, I get it.
No offense to girls who do that, but I wanted to work.
Right.
They didn't want me to work. So I understand what these guys were going through, guys like John Moxley and Matt Hardy.
Yeah.
They go to a new promotion and they are given the ball and they can run to another state with it, and they're doing phenomenal. It's all about being happy too. If you're not happy with your job, it's going to show. You're going to be miserable. I can honestly say that in the 7 years that I was with ECW, I loved every single minute that I was there. Even if I had to wake up at 4 o'clock to catch a flight, I didn't care, because I always looked forward to being on the road, Right. And then when you go to another company and you don't enjoy it, it's like you just get that feeling in your stomach. Oh my gosh, I have to go. I don't want to go. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not enjoyable anymore, and you lose the love for the business. So I think fans wanted an alternative, and AEW just fits perfectly. And the stars are shining. You know what I mean? They're not being held back, so it's a good thing.
It's all about timing, and they came along at the right time. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Chris Jericho, unbelievable. I mean, who would have thought that, for being a 25-year veteran at his age now, being on top of the sport again, and he is. Yeah. And to me, it's awesome, to be honest with you. Like I said, it's pumped new life into wrestling, especially wrestling fans. It is an alternative, like you said, and they are taking the ball and running with it, even with no crowds, with this pandemic going on. They're getting the pay-per-view buys. They're getting the ratings. It's incredible what they can do without a crowd.
Right. And it's hard. It's very hard to work in an arena with no one there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, when I first watched Raw and SmackDown with no crowd that very first week, and they didn't do the camera angles or anything, it was painful. And social media, Brian Alvarez, Dave Meltzer, they're texting, we're tweeting, and they're like, this is very difficult to watch. They need to change something up. And I think a week later, they switched to the hard camera angle. And slowly but surely, they've incorporated everything, the barriers, the fans, and all that stuff, the talent. But it is tough. It is tough. To me, professional wrestling is an interactive. The wrestler, valet, whatever, feeds off the crowd. The crowd feeds off that. When you take one out of the equation, that's a tough thing to do. Very tough. Yeah,
you're trying to get your heat and you're trying to get over, and there's no one to play off of, and it's just like it loses something. You know what I mean?
It's scary watching Daniel Bryan come out to yes and yesing nobody.
I know. It's sad. I mean, that's the state of the world today. But they're doing the best they can, and I don't understand why all the other sports have been canceled, but wrestling is still continuing. I mean, now I know everything's starting to open up again, but I just feel like everything should have been on the shelf.
Well, I agree with that, because I said this would be a perfect time, even for WWE, to stop and reset. Say, let's take a break. Let's take a 1 or 2 month hiatus. You can't put alternative programming on. You have plenty in your vault to do that.
Sure.
But they opted not to do that. Instead, we're relegated to pretty much the same talent week after week. Haven't seen Roman Reigns in 2 months, 3 months. There's a lot of stars that are still missing that, don't want to be there because they don't want to chance it and so forth.
I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to either.
But it also has to do a lot to do with the state of Florida, too, where both AEW and WWE film. The governor was very relaxed on that. I think it was 2 weeks into the pandemic, he finally listed wrestling as a essential business.
Yeah.
And, of course, that just opened up, that just, gave everybody the green light to continue what they were doing. But I do agree on the pandemic issue. I do a WhattaDay Wrestling Minute every week, and this week was on that, about testing. And to me, I think the future is going to be, if you're going to go to a live event the next few months after we're all through with the phased openings, you're probably going to have to get a COVID test. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to either say, yeah, I'm negative, or get one on the spot, or do whatever. I don't know. But that's the new normal. so to speak. That's in the
Yeah.
past. It's sad, but it does take away. You want to go see a wrestling show, and you just can't walk in and see a wrestling show anymore. You got to go through all these suits and bounds. It's like crazy.
And you can't blame a guy like Roman Reigns for not wanting to be on the road. He's legit has an ailment going on. He's sick.
Yeah.
So by all means, stay home. Your life is worth more than your spot to me.
And there's a lot of other talented. They have kids. They don't want to bring it home to them.
Look, I have a 90-year-old mother here that I'm a caregiver for. I'm married. I have 2 kids, and I have my mom living here. Right. As soon as this pandemic started, I was supposed to go away that weekend. I was the first one to cancel.
Yep.
And they said, "Oh, we're still going to go on with the show." I said, "Well, I can't do it because I am not going to bring anything home, especially with my mom." That was my biggest.
I remember that. I think you were tweeting about that, weren't you? I think I saw something on that. It was right.
I know I was the first one to cancel, and then a lot of the boys were like, "Well, we're still going to go." I said, "You can go. That's your choice. I don't feel comfortable going, and even now, I don't feel comfortable going. Until everything is calmed down a little bit." My next live event is supposed to be at the end of August.
Yeah.
And they're saying it's going to happen, but we don't know. You don't know. You have to go day by day with this stuff. So
the experts say the virus dictates everything. So we'll see what happens. I mean,
if it happens, it happens. But if it does, and I still don't feel that I'm comfortable with it, I just won't go.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit.
Yeah, health and family is much more important.
I tell you. So to get back to the wrestling part, and we get sidetracked with COVID.
Yeah.
And you with ECW, travel-wise, how? I'm trying to go back to the '90s because I have 3 kids. I was in the middle of parenting and all that time, so wrestling was kind of like a side thing to me. All my kids are growing up now anyway, so that's good. What was ECW's travel schedule like? I mean, how many days on, how many days off? Were you, to me, they came on weekends. My neighborhood, Boston, saw them in Fall River maybe like every 3-4 months. That was it. It wasn't as often as monthly house shows and all that stuff. But what was your travel schedule like?
So when I first started, it was every weekend, with the arena being every 3 weeks.
Okay.
I'm sorry. After that, we started, traveling more. And so we went from 2 days to 3, and then we went from 3 days to 4.
Wow.
So we did, so pretty much we were on the road. It was kind of 5 days a week at one point because you have travel day and then you have to work 4 nights. And that was towards the end. But when I first started, it was only the weekend. It was only like Friday, Saturday.
Right. Now, what's the furthest you travel with ECW? Were they nationwide yet, or just relegated to Philly Northeast, or where
when
were
I
you?
First started, it was it was more local. It was like all of Pennsylvania, included Pittsburgh. We did New York. We all went all the way up to Buffalo. We would do, I remember going down to like Delaware, Maryland, Connecticut, tri-state areas, stuff like that. Then we started going across, the Ohio area, just Michigan, that kind of thing. And then we got to go to Japan. I went to Japan twice.
Wow.
For ECW. We went to Canada. We did Toronto. We just started going all over. Whoever wanted us.
How was reception in Japan? Were they fans of this type of wrestling?
Oh, yeah. ECW was way over in Japan.
Right. So you guys, did you do major arenas over there, or were they like the?
Yeah, because we weren't there as ECW. We worked for FMW, and so we were on their pay-per-view, and the gig was through Sabu.
Okay.
So we represented ECW, but it was only a select few of us who got to go to Japan.
Wow, that's awesome. So you you were with the company 7 years, so you did a lot of traveling then.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's your brief stay, I would call it, in the WWE or WWF at the time.
Yeah.
You tell me. What was it like going from ECW to the major player, I should say, in wrestling at that time, still at that time? What was the transition like?
Well, I call it the fake ECW. Because we all knew from the get-go it was not going to be ECW, although we were told one thing and then another thing happened. So when I was approached to do it, it was after One Night Stand. We did One Night Stand in 05. And then we get this call, like not even a year later, Vince is bringing back ECW, and we're all like rolling our eyes like, okay. I am 34 now at the time, so I'm getting up there, you know.
You're not. 34 is young.
Not in the business, it's not. But I'm thinking to myself, if I don't do this, this could be my last big shot at making some money, right? I have a gut feeling it's not going to work, but I'm going to try, and I'll see what happens. And so I say to them, can I do a year? And they come back and they say, no, we need you to sign a 3-year deal because we want people who are going to be loyal. Everybody signed 3-year deals back then.
You said 3 years, right?
3 years, yes. I wanted to sign 1 year because I knew I wasn't going to last for 3 years. I just knew it. And so I obliged. I signed, sent it back. And I'm told, you know, I'm going to do everything that I did for Paul. I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to maybe be a mouthpiece for someone who can't talk well, all that stuff. Okay, that's great. Right. I get there and they say, okay, you have to have bathing suits. And I'm thinking, okay, why? And they're like, well, you're going to be doing swimsuit competitions. I'm like, I'd never had to do them before. Now I'm 34. You know, I've been in the business 13 years at this point. I had more seniority in that locker room than any of the girls.
Wow.
Even Charmel, and Charmel was the mommy there. Yeah. And I had more experience than Charmel did at that point. But you do what you're told, you know? So I get bikinis and I start doing these bikini contests, and I hated every second of it. Just hated it. And I would tell Johnny Ace, like, can't you guys put me with someone? Like, I was told I was supposed to be put with someone, and Johnny's like, oh, just be patient, we'll think of something. And I'm just like, you don't have to think. There's ideas. Like, why is everybody telling me we'll think of something?
Because they don't know. Yeah.
It's simple. Put me with one of the guys. Put me with an ECW guy.
Right.
So finally, they pair me with Balls Mahoney after, you know, months. Well, we're going to put with Balls and we'll see how it goes. So I'm like, great. And at this point, let me backtrack for a second because I'm not on TV and I'm there for months and they're not using me, right? I'm showing up at all these towns, nothing. So they're doing this promo and Paul is in it and they have all the ECW guys lined up and Paul's like, you know what's missing? A pair of boobs is missing. And he says to Vince, can I get Francine in this promo? Now, no, I've been working there and nobody sees me ever because I've never been on TV. And Vince goes, yeah, Vince didn't care, whatever. So a runner comes and gets me, and we're going to use you in this promo. So they put me in the promo, and I remember, I think it was Shane McMahon, when we watched the TV back, he said, you got the biggest pop out of all, because everybody turned, and you could see everybody's face. And when I turned, that was my debut, you know. Yeah. There was a pop. Right. And she's like, nice pop. And I was like, oh, thanks. Didn't mean anything, because nobody cared. The office didn't care, you know, but to me, I'm like, okay, somebody was digging me. I got some kind of a pop going on. So let's use me, you know, especially in the towns that, you know, use me in Philly, use me in New York, use me in Boston. I know I can get over in these towns. And the bikini contest, they were just brutal. And then they finally said, we'll put you with Balls and you're going to work with Ariel and Kevin Thorne. Okay. Great. Shelly and I are, you know, we're friends. That's cool. Love it. We started getting over. They start doing us on house shows, pairing us, and the reception was great. And Johnny Ace was at the one house show, and we worked, and the people loved it. And we go to the back, and he's just like, I think you and Balls are going to work out. And I said, that's great, because I didn't want to do the bikini stuff anymore. Right. I love Balls. He's a friend for years. Sure. Yeah, I just don't care who I work with. I just want to work. Let me work. I'll bump. I'll do whatever. So they want to put us on, they want us to go on TV. Right. And I'm not on TV yet. And I'm in line to get my draw. And I hear Vince McMahon. And he's like, Francine, can I talk to you? And I'm just like, oh, crap. I really don't have many interactions with Vince. Shake his hand, say hello, sir. He goes, let's take a walk around the arena. So I'm like, what the hell did I do? And he goes on to tell me, I really know nothing about you. And I'm like, well, why'd you hire me? I don't get it. Like, do you hire people that you don't know anything about? And I turn around to him and I said, well, didn't you buy he says, I don't know anything about ECW. And I said, well, didn't you buy the tape library? Don't you own our tape library? He's like, well, I don't watch it. I said,
oh my God.
Okay. So he has one of his guys watch it, and
Sure.
Here I'm told Shane McMahon was the big ECW mark. Shane knew who everybody is. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm walking with Vince and he's just like, he's like, you're not standing out to me. You're not doing anything that stands out to me. And I'm like, because you're not giving me the opportunity. I just want to work. And he says, well, when you see me next time, wherever I am, I want you to run and I want you to slap me on the back and I want you to say, hey, Vince, what do you got for me tonight? I go, yeah, okay, Vince. And I'm thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. So I go back.
Like a friendly type thing?
What's that?
Like a friendly reminder?
I don't know what it was, but the next week we're at Raw and I see him and he's with a bunch of guys in suits. I don't even know who, but like a bat out of hell, I ran down the hallway and I smacked him on the back and I said, hey, Vince, what do you got for me? And he looks at me and he goes, that's what I wanted to hear. And he gives me a hug. And it was so weird. And then like he lets me go and he walks away. So I just walked away because I said, okay, that's what he told me to do. Well, that night, my name's on the TV, the paper for TV. Wow. And that's when they put me and Balls and Ariel and Kevin.
Wow. Just like
so
that,
huh? Okay, well, he kept his promise. That was cool.
Now, how long were you there until that moment?
It was a
while.
while.
How long were you there?
Yeah,
it was a while?
I only worked there for 6 months, technically.
Yeah.
It was a very short stint. So I was there for a couple months before this even happened.
Wow.
But I looked like a lunatic. I mean, I literally ran past people in this hallway and smacked Vince. People probably thought I was crazy, but that's what he told me to do. And so I worked with Shelly and Kevin and Balls that night, and we got to work two times on TV. We did two different ECW TNN shows, right? Or not TNN, I'm sorry, Sci-Fi. And when I go in after that, they're like, I hope you have your bathing suit because Balls had failed the urine test. There was something in his system, so he was off the road. Failed the drug test.
A legitimate drug test, not a storyline.
You pee in a cup drug test.
Okay, yeah. Legitimate, not a storyline.
No, legitimate. Like when we were in the back, you would have to go every once in a while. It would be like sporadic. Hey, go pee in this cup. You never knew when it was coming, Yeah. And so he got pinched and he wasn't there anymore. So I didn't have anyone to work with. I have to go put my bathing suit on. And there goes my push. Yeah. And I'm just like, Balls, I'm going to kill you. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And after that, I went to Johnny and I was crying. And I said, please release me. I'm done. I have not. If you can't see that I want to work, I have nothing more to say. Let me go home. And he's like, we're not letting you go. Nope, we're not letting you go. And I was just, good Lord. And I'm literally crying. And then a month and a half after, I get the phone call. Oh, we have nothing for you. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Now, how did you feel at that point? Did you feel relieved or just?
There was a sense of relief, but there was also a sense of panic because it's like, okay, I got to go back to the indies now.
Right.
I need, I'm in my Rolodex getting numbers and trying to get booked. And thank God, I've had a decent reputation with working that people did want to hire me afterwards.
Right. But now, where was Paul Heyman at this point?
He was
where was he at? He was there.
He was there, and he was a cheerleader for me. He pitched and pitched and pitched, and I know he did because he was in those meetings. I know he was pulling for me, but for whatever reason, part of it, I think I wasn't homegrown. I was told you can't be the Queen of Extreme here. You can't use that because there's Queen Charmel. She's the queen. You can't use the moniker of queen. Okay, fine. Francine is my birth name. That's my real name. Okay. So they couldn't take it from me.
Sure.
They didn't want to change it, I assume, because of the ECW tie-in.
Right.
But in my contract, it said they borrowed it. So luckily, I was able to keep using it everywhere I went because it's my name. You know what I mean? But I know for a fact that Paul tried his hardest. I don't blame him. I don't blame myself. I was willing to work. I blame them. You know?
No, I agree.
100%.
So it was a tough transition to begin with because you're used to working all the time, and here you are, not doing anything or doing stuff that you really didn't want to be doing because you thought you were brought in something else. So it's understandable.
And honestly, even though I had 13 years of experience, I went in so humble. Johnny said he goes, "You're like watching paint dry." And I said, should I take offense that? He goes, "No, not your work." He goes, "You aren't making an effort. Like, I used to bring a book with me and I would read a book in the locker room. Right. I never was the type of person to try and, kiss somebody's ass, to be noticed or to, chase down the top guys. And I never did that. I would say my hellos and then I would literally eat at catering and go back to the locker room and nobody saw me. And he's like, "It's watching paint dry. You're not adding any." I said, "Well, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm not comfortable. Like, because if you do too much, you're a brown noser. And then if you do too little," that was me. So I basically just tried to keep my mouth shut and be humble. And I just stayed out of people's way. And I'm not going to say who, but I was told by one of the higher ups, "You need to go in Vince's office and you need to like put oil on your chest and lean into his desk and, ask him." And I said, "I don't do that. That's not what I do. And if you can't see my work ethic and how hard I want to work to earn a spot here, I don't know what else to tell you." And that guy was just like, "Well, for Vince to notice you, there's a lot of girls here and da-da-da." And I said, "Well, then I don't get noticed because that's not the way I play." I never had to do that with Paul. And never once did Paul. And Vince didn't hit on me. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's what they told me to do to get noticed.
Exactly. It's unfortunate, that was the case and so forth, because if they used you correctly, you probably would have transcended into longer than 6 months. Let's put it that way.
Probably. But
that's a point. Do you still keep in touch with Paul Heyman time to time?
No, I haven't talked to Paul in forever, but a lot of people bash him because of what went down. I thank Paul. If it wasn't for Paul giving me my push, I wouldn't be sitting here today. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that happen that I don't understand that are unfortunate and that leave me sad. But at the same token, he made me. He created Francine. So I have nothing but love for the guy, and I always wish him the best.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, I've spoken to him on occasion a couple of times. Great guy, really nice guy. So it's unfortunate how he's treated again in the WWE, because I don't know if you heard this week he was let go, creative director and so forth. So I don't know what's going on there, but he's got talent. He's got that.
He's brilliant.
And then I go back to my Bill Apter's a good friend of mine. He's like my mentor. And he tells me the Paul Heyman stories when he was a kid trying to take pictures backstage. And I mean, the stories are just incredible how he got himself into the business. And to do that back then, I don't think he could do that nowadays, but he seems like a great guy. So, he
was great to work for. He's the best boss I ever had. He really was.
So I always ask my guests, because it's wrestling related, the Francine in her prime, her wrestling prime. So we'll go back to whatever you think is your wrestling prime. Who would the Francine in her prime would like to step into the ring nowadays with a current star? Anybody, or you can go back to that time if you didn't get a chance to do that. But who would Francine want to step in the ring with? So
am I picking a male to manage or a female to feud with?
You want to give me two? Give me the ballet Francine and give me the wrestler.
So I think today I absolutely love Dolph Ziggler.
Okay.
I don't think he needs a manager, but I think a heel pairing with him and I would have been money.
Nice. I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think he's really talented. He has a great look. He's great on the mic. Like, I think he's like an.
He's got the total package. There's no doubt.
Yeah, very well rounded.
Shawn Michaels. He reminds me of Shawn Michaels back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, he's good. And
today, I know in the past, like I really wanted to work with Sherry Martel. Yeah, and I got to meet her one night at the arena, and we were I was green as grass, and we were talking about how we were going to work with each other, but then she had left for WCW, so she's the one that got away that I never got to work with. But I think in today's day and age, there's so many talented girls. Like Alexa Bliss is just
5 feet of fury.
She's so good. Charlotte is just so good. There's too many girls out there.
I just always like to ask that question because, I mean, I asked Magnificent Morocco the other day that question. He named everybody, of course, but Tito Santana and Don Morocco both led off with Randy Orton, believe it or not.
He's hot right now. I see him all over the place.
I don't know if it's a generational thing too, because obviously he's a third generation wrestler, but he's got it all.
Yeah.
You know, he can talk. He's big like a wrestler. He's not, you know, the smaller guys, I should say. But I've been watching him for years. I've seen him as a kid grow up and everything. So, you know, it was just amazing to hear two legends. And the first ones out of their mouth, both of them, were Randy Orton, which was like, wow, okay. Randy Orton's got something for him, I guess. All right. So interesting.
Yeah.
So you, before the pandemic hit and so forth, were you still doing the conventions? Were you still doing meet and greets and things like that?
Yeah, I started maybe 2-3 years ago. I started because I took a long hiatus.
Okay.
I got married and then I had babies and I was like, this is my life now. I'm not going to look back. I'm not going to go back to wrestling. And that lasted 4 or 5 years. I didn't do a thing with the business. I just stayed home. I was still getting requests to do signings, though. Sure. And I just kept saying, no. And then it came to a point where my husband was like, I can watch the kids if you want to start doing this again, you know, just for the money. And I was like, I don't know, because that motherly instinct inside me doesn't want to leave the children home. Not that I don't think my husband can take care of things. The separation anxiety. I don't want to leave the kids, right? I did my first convention, which was WrestleCon in New Orleans a couple years back. And I was going for 5 days, and it killed me. It killed me to leave the kids for that long. Because before that, I was doing stuff like in the area, but like my kids could come with me.
Right.
Thing, the Cubs and the kids would come, and I would sign a couple hours, and we would leave. Easy stuff. But now I'm on the road again, and I'm just like, I don't know. But if the money is right and the conventions be enough, I do the conventions. Sure. I got roped into doing actual shows with Shane Douglas again, so we're kind of getting booked as a team.
Nice.
And I was nervous about that because I'm 48, and I'm like, do I really belong at ringside at this stage in the game? And, Shane broke it down, and he's like, it's nostalgia. People want to see nostalgia. Yeah. And I said, okay, but the reception has been great. So on occasion, I'll work ringside, but for the most part, I like to do the signings.
Listen, if Motley Crue and Def Leppard can get back together and tour, you'll be fine.
Aren't they?
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I don't want to welcome my stay, though. That's the thing.
Nah, we want to see Shane Douglas and you back in the ring. Come on, why not? One night only. There you go. We could do that again. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. No,
do you miss the fans? Do you miss the interaction with the fans at all?
That's why I love doing the conventions, because it gets personal. You know what I mean? You get to hear not only wrestling stories, but you get to hear their stories. I meet so many people online on Twitter. And then to see the face that belongs to all these nice comments that they're leaving, it's just, oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you. So it becomes a little more personal, and I like that aspect of it. I'm a people person, so I love hearing what they enjoyed about ECW or about wrestling in general, just talking and reminiscing, and it's a lot of fun. And I also love to see the boys because I don't get to see them that often. So when I get to see the guys, it's always a win-win too.
Now, you said there's something scheduled in August for you, but you're not sure if you're going to be going or not. Yeah. You see yourself doing that again in the future when things get back to normal?
Yeah. I want to get back on the road. I don't want to do it every weekend, but like I said, if the show is big enough and the money's right, sure. Disney is not cheap.
I hear you. Wait till they go to college.
Well, they're little yet, so we think about Disney right now, and it's not cheap. So when mommy gets to work and get that extra money, and it always helps. So
there you go. Now, I always let my guests. You have a podcast, correct?
I have a podcast. It's called Eyes Up Here.
Yeah.
It also has a Patreon that goes along with it.
Okay.
So the podcast is actually under the Russo brand.
Okay. Yep. Vince. Yep.
Yep. So you can hear the podcast over there, or you can join my Patreon at patreon.com/Francine Podcast, and you get content that you won't get on Vince Russo's channel.
Okay. Oh wow.
So it's there. We play games. We did a drinking game. We watch porn parodies and rate them, like silly little. It's fun stuff. It's all fun stuff. I do Cameo. I'm on Cameo.com.
I think I know that.
Thank you. And that's been great. That's been a lot of fun. A lot of gentlemen have been wanting me to cut heel promos on them, and makes me feel like I'm back on TV. So that's a lot of fun to do.
I just wanted you to say, "Hey, Joe, what a day."
Yes, and you were one of the more mild ones. There's been some doozies out there, but it's all in good fun.
Oh God, that's funny.
Look, nobody has crossed the line yet, and if they did, I wouldn't record it. That's just the way it is. Sure. But it's been great. Cameo has been such a relief because with all the money that I lost being on the road, I get to pick it up by doing these videos. So it's been a blessing. And I have an Etsy store and just social media, just trying to keep in touch with all the fans at this time.
I got to get on that Etsy store. I need my autograph. I got to get my autograph. Yeah. I got to put you on the wall back here. That's what I got to do.
I know. You have some impressive names.
They got Becky Lynch, Bill Apter, NWO, Bruce Beefcake. We got them all up there.
That's
Greg
great.
Valentine, Honky Tonk, man, you name it.
Love it.
Good stuff.
Love it.
I do know we're running out of time here, so I do want to thank you again for coming on the WhattaDay podcast.
My pleasure.
And ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the WhattaDay podcast with the lovely Queen of Extreme, ECW owns Francine. Thank you very much for being on the show, Francine.
Thank you. Good luck.
That is, hey Joe, what a day.
This has been a WhattaDay production. Filmed on location at WhattaDay Studios. The views expressed by Joe Lowry are his and his alone, and that's how it is, so just deal with it. This has been a WhattaDay production.